Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Kaplan, and today I'm going to be talking about what you can expect from your team after trading away a superstar. So, what motivated me to do this project is that I've been watching the Miami Heat for all of my life, but specifically since 2018, I've been watching my favorite player, Jimmy Butler. He's taken us to two NBA Finals, and we recently traded him away to the Golden State Warriors. It inspired me to look at what I could expect from the future as a fan, and as well, what does superstar level play do for a team? Does superstar level play truly make a team better, or is it just individual statistics that make us view individuals a certain way? Who does this data affect? This data mostly works for general managers and fans. However, it also works for coaches. This data allows general managers to look at the results of this project and see whether they think they should trade away a certain superstar. As you'll be able to see in future trends, you can see definite impacts in win percentage, points per game, 3-point percent shooting. And truly, like, these GMs can look at this data and see if trading away their superstar is worth the value they'd be getting on the other side. This data also impacts fans a lot. As people who emotionally invest in a certain team, you can see what you can expect. Trading away your favorite player or your best player is something that a lot of fans don't tend to enjoy doing. However, maybe looking at this data, you could see there might be some hope, or maybe there isn't. Next are the subjects of this project. So these are the four superstar trades that I will be going over. Number one is Kevin Durant, who the season before he was traded averaged 34 and 10 in a playoff series against the eventual NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks. He was widely regarded as one of the best players in the world at this point. Next is Luka Doncic, who averaged a 34 points, 9 rebound, 9 assist season. He was the runner-up for MVP and took the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals. He was then traded the season after. Um, Jimmy Butler was a star for Miami Heat, who had taken them to two of the last five NBA Finals with a particularly lackluster team. He was well known for backpacking them, and eventually in the playoffs is well known as one of the better players. And then there's also Carmelo Anthony, who was averaging the third most points per game in the season he was traded, only behind LeBron James and Kevin Durant. So, the most important finding is winning. People do these trades to win. They want to win either now or in the future, but I think for the now, we're going to look at the winning impact on the season. So, as you can see, specifically with the Heat and Mavericks win percentage, they all start out at a certain mark and they all trend downwards as the season goes on. You can see particular dips in early February, which is when both the trades occurred. You can see specifically the first week of February for the Heat and Mavericks, there's a significant jump, implying that they lost a significant amount of games during that time and continued to lose. For the Nets and Nuggets data set, you can see a bar graph on the bottom. The Nets winning percent chance before they traded Kevin Durant was at 59, which is about 60, which in the NBA is able to get you a high playoff spot. But after they lost Kevin Durant, it went down to 53.6, which is enough to get you a lower playoff seeding to maybe even a play-in spot. However, the Nuggets are an outlier because after they traded Carmelo, their win percentage actually rose by 16%, which is very different compared to the other three because the other three, there's at least a very significant drop. However, with the Nuggets, for some reason, they started to win more, which is actually very interesting. So next is we're going to look at a correlation between points per game. As you can see, the dates of the trades are listed, so you can see exactly where you should be looking. But all of them generally throughout the season show a negative trend. After the Kevin Durant trade, the Carmelo Anthony trade, and the Jimmy Butler trade, you can see a slight increase of points the next week. This graph also shows a moving average of 3 in order to better show a trend. Just a regular graph of points per game doesn't show much, it just shows a bunch of variance. But a moving graph of 3 shows 3 game trends, bunches, clusters of like more grouped together, more consistent data. So I chose to use that. So you can see 3 of the 4 teams, the Heat, Nuggets, Nets, immediately dip down in points per game after the trade. Eventually they level out, but some of them even trends like with the Heat and Mavericks. You can see they ended their season on a downturn. Even the Nets. Another thing I looked into is 3-point percentage. Either are these star players that shoot the 3-point ball elitely? Are these mid-range scorers that get their 3-pointers open? Are these people who go to the rim a lot and get their 3-point shooters open? Is there an impact between 3-point efficiency, which is huge in today's game, and superstar play? So again, in early February, you can see even though this is a moving average of 3, there is still a lot of variance. These NBA players are very talented. They could shoot 50% one night, and an off night they could shoot 30 the next. It's very difficult to find a consistent trend with these. The trends do all trend a little bit downwards, not hugely, not like there's not like a huge impact. One thing that's noticed is there's a particular degree of inconsistency after the February mark. You can see there's not really a true consistency anywhere because it's such an inconsistent number, but these trends do trend downwards, and especially a lot of the lows of the season were met after these trades. For the Heat, you can see their all-time low of the season after the graph gets to the third game. The lowest is right after they trade Jimmy Butler. You can say the same thing about the Nuggets, and you could say the same thing about the Mavericks. They all reach their three-point floor right after these trades. Maybe players are adjusting. Players that weren't asked to shoot threes as much are now being asked to shoot threes. So that just immediately after, a lot of these teams are struggling for the next week or two. And so here's some key statistics. One thing that we can see is actually every single team, all four of them, ended up shooting worse from 3-point percentage after their trades, whether it be by 1% or 3%, anywhere in that range. All the teams shot worse. Another trend we can see is that a lot of the teams, two of the teams actually stayed similar in defense, which would be the Heat and the Nets. They actually allowed the same amount of points per game before and after the trades. However, the Nuggets actually gave up 8 less points per game, and the Mavericks actually gave up 9 points more per game. So we have two middle grounds. We have either end of the spectrum. We have like good defensive players, bad defensive players, mediocre defensive players, and people who don't have much of a defensive impact. Next to the three-pointers attempted per game, a lot of the teams, such as the Mavericks and the Nuggets, tended not to impact the three-point shot per game. They kept a consistent game plan, but the Nets seemed to increase their three-point shooting by a lot. Actually, they increased it by 6, which is 1.5 quarter, which is a lot more than it sounds like. But also combined with their 3% less efficiency rate, they can really they're really not being as efficient from the 3-point line. They're shooting more, they're making less, and that definitely impacts the negative impact in points per game, and also negatively impacts their winning rate. They're allowing the same amount of points per game, so they're playing consistent defense, but their offense is getting worse. It's getting less efficient, and Kevin Durant is definitely a huge part in an offensive efficiency. He's known as one of the most efficient bucket getters in the NBA history, so that's definitely one loss. Another thing with the Heat, you can see they actually went to go shoot less threes. Maybe Jimmy Butler wasn't getting as many threes open. People who weren't as confident shooting the ball were on the court. A lot of rookies too. Why is this project relevant? This project has a lot of wider applications, specifically first within the NBA. There are a lot of players in the NBA who are slated to get traded this season, potentially Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's a well-known player. We could look into this and see what this would do to the Milwaukee Bucks if they could leave. This may help in either trade package agreements, no trade package agreements, maybe free agency negotiations. You could really use this data to see the games where the player isn't on the floor, what this does to the team. And for other sports, this applies to every sport, honestly. Superstars are a great part of every sport. Every sport has them: hockey, soccer, football. Every sport has talent. And to look at the data and see what that talent does to impact a team on a team statistic level is something that can apply to every single sport, no matter what the limitations. Obviously, 3-point percentage isn't something that worked in hockey, but you could still look at shot conversion rates, efficiency. Some of the limitations of this project were that some certain columns of data weren't there in the older sets. Obviously, from 2010 to 2011, there wasn't as much analytical advancements. So looking at some of the stats I wanted to be able to find weren't as easy. There also weren't certain data points for some of the more niche data 2 or 3 years ago, including like first quarter points, second quarter points, some of the stuff that isn't as important but would be nice to have. Also, one thing that was I couldn't find a data set with advanced stats, which would include like 3-point like per minute or things like that. Things that take into account minutes per game, because a lot of these stats don't take into account games that went to overtime. So that would be one limitation. Yeah, some future changes I would make is to get better data, maybe include a per minute kind of stat, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you and have a nice break.